McClellan, and I have, goodness gracious, St. Ignatius, two special guests today, and mother and daughter, good friends of mine now too, Lauren Goff and Cheryl Goff. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is, we've been planning this for a while, and today's the day that we're doing it because both of you have a story to share. And, on the Whole Care Network, it's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. And I know a lot of my listeners and viewers know Lauren because we have done a few of these before, but Cheryl, we're going to focus on you today. And we want to know a little bit about you and your background. And we're going to get into this story about turning pain into purpose.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, Lauren, have you done a podcast before with your daughter?
We have not done a podcast together. No.
So
we've just done a lot of productions together. She's done the production and I've shown up.
Right. But the two of you have, obviously mother and daughter, but you've taken the pain that you've both experienced in losing your son, your brother, your father, your husband, and you've turned it into a purpose. And that's why I'm just so honored to have this conversation with both of you today, because grief is difficult. And there's different stages of grief, but you're taking your grief and you're helping others. And so, Cheryl, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, we lost my father in March of 2020 to a stroke, and my brother, who had been serving in the Air Force, ended up with what doctors speculate is a result of the extreme radiation he was exposed to doing his job for the Air Force, but he ended up with a rare form of leukemia, and he passed away on June 3rd of 2020. So not even 3 months really after we lost my dad. So it was a lot. And at a crazy time in the world, when people were afraid to be together. And when you're going through things like that, I think togetherness is such an important thing to have. And we were a little bit starved for a whole lot of things going through that. And for me, what I found was, people reach out and obviously offer condolences. And what do you do when you can't be there? You send flowers or cookies or comfort baskets. And it didn't feel like enough, and not because I didn't think that, people didn't care or like we weren't getting enough, but it's just, I had to do something. I had to find a way to make this make sense for my life still being here. And for me, my brother, all he wanted to do was help people. When he separated from the military, he wanted to come out and help people. And given that was really all he wanted to do when he was, before the cancer diagnosis, it was helping veterans or people with anxiety and depression. At one point he had talked about even taking over my mom's practice. And then when he got sick, he just wanted to add that he could help people with cancer also. It never stopped his want to help people. And I felt like that was a torch I could carry and had to carry to make sure that he lived on that way. And where I didn't feel the need to become a therapist, there was other things I could do. And I kind of had to dive in and find that.
And Cheryl, as an event director, as an owner of an event company, focused on creating events that would honor the legacy for Elliott, that would create purpose and meaning through events that she's done over the last 2.5 years.
And I would imagine creating those events has helped in the healing process.
It certainly does, especially when we connect them to a cause. The first way of helping people I found was after Elliott passed away, there was some media attention. There were some people requesting interviews, and I put my foot down on it had to be an inspirational story. He didn't lose his battle. In fact, I think he's the biggest winner I've ever seen because
Right.
we're still having this conversation today where we're talking
Right.
about his inspiration and his fight today. So he did not lose that battle. And for me, it was so important that any story told about him be one of hope and inspiration because so many people were just so lost and scared and there was just so much happening in the world. So his story had to bring a smile to your face versus a tear to your eye. Happy tears are okay and we can cry because we miss him, but when you hear his story, I wanted it to fill people with a sense of purpose and understanding and helping. So where yes, I could pour myself into planning events and putting things together, I started connecting the dots where these events had to help people. They had to do some good.
Right.
It was actually one of the articles I had Society finding me and nominating me as a visionary of the year. And I kind of gave them the same spiel of, I'll help, I'll get involved, but for me, there's no win or lose here. There's just honoring my brother and whatever I can do to maintain that. I'm happy to, especially with an organization like LLS that does so much good for so many people beyond, I think, what so many people even know.
Well, and that's one of the other main reasons to do these have these conversations is to inform people that are in similar situations that there is help out there. There are organizations that are there to help, but just as important, there are wonderful folks like the two of you who have gone through an experience and are making a difference in other people's lives by sharing the stories, because that's where we all connect.
Well, that's been a big part of what has gotten me through these last few years is that I have my practice, that I have learned about resources that are available. It's not just on me to provide support and guidance and encouragement for people, because as Cheryl talks about, there's buoyancy. There's always an ability to be buoyant. But how do we get there? We don't need to feel like we have to get there alone. And I think that's been a big part of why Cheryl's been such a driving force in getting through pain with purpose.
And talk a little bit about that. I'm going to mix up the words. I was going to say Beyonce, but a buoyancy. I think you've introduced me to a new word, which I'm most appreciative. But expound on it a little bit more about how that how the buoyancy and you deal with the grief and how I think the expression that you gave me was navigating the ocean of grief. And people deal with grief in a lot of different ways, but when we can talk about it, I think it gives people some keen insights on how they can work through
Sure. I think
their grief
if you ask
process.
me what my paradise is, right, I would tell you it's a beautiful tropical beach with those gorgeous blue-green waters. And that's a beautiful thing to think about. But what's not as pretty is when you have a crazy storm that comes in, and when you think about a buoy that's out there in the middle of the ocean, there's days where those are beautiful, calm, still waters. And then there are days where you are just, that buoy is getting pummeled, pummeled by wave after wave after wave, like it's not going to stop. And I think for me, in the very beginning stages of grief, people talk a lot about the experience of it's a roller coaster that you can't get off. And I think that while that can feel true some days, for me, it was not quite as haphazard or fun as a roller coaster can be. It was more of that, what does a buoy do? It floats back to the top. It has to. It doesn't matter how long that it's submerged or how big or strong or intense that wave was. And I consider myself a happy, upbeat person despite my grief, but there are still days where that buoy is struggling to get back to the top. And it's the trust that I know that I will, that it will. And I think for me, that started to connect a little bit more than a roller coaster ride you can't get off of, because a buoy knows it's getting back to the top and it knows that there will be calm waters. So obviously, I don't know, I can't speak for all buoys. I can speak for myself as one, Pixar, I'm sure, will make some beautiful cartoon out of that. But
Right.
I think it's important to remember that when those waves are coming, the waters calm down, the storm ends. And as you figure out a way of creating normalcy in a life
Right.
filled with grief, I think that's such an important piece to hold on to, is that the waters will calm down. And for me, I've found ways of helping to calm those waters myself. And that's been pouring myself into being there for other people, supporting organizations, throwing parties. I believe in celebrating lives well lived. Absolutely. We're still here. We're still living.
Celebrating
And
life.
I think
Yeah.
that that in itself is worth celebrating. And when I think about
Right.
my dad and my brother and the friends that I've unfortunately lost over the years, I don't think any one of them would feel good about me sitting and being sad. You know, it's okay to feel it, but to just live in it for me feels like I had to find a way to
Right.
make my life happy and give it a purpose. And I tried to turn pain into purpose so that it felt like there was a reason I'm still here.
I'm kind of giddy if it's okay to say that word in the midst of talking about something that's very serious, because you've gone through the loss yourself as well, but you have to be so proud of your daughter for
It's
what she's doing.
she's done and is doing an amazing job. I am always in awe of her. And I know many parents will say, praise their children in many ways, but I know I've experienced the pain in Cheryl. I handle pain very differently in my
Right.
practice for myself. And Cheryl just puts it out there to create life, to create purpose, meaning. And when people live with grief, it's finding a path toward connecting to meaning and purpose in our lives. Where Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote about the stages of grief, David Kessler wrote a book, which, when you have it as common sense and somebody puts it in a book, you go, well, of course. And his book
Right.
is the sixth stage, which is finding meaning.
Finding meaning.
And as we are alive, we need to find meaning and purpose in our lives in whatever way. Elliott did plan that he would someday take over my practice. He did want it to be helpful for people going through difficult times, especially veterans, especially people who are struggling with a long-term illness, and finding a way, finding support, guidance, and encouragement to find a way to create more meaning in your life. Using the roller coaster analogy, we choose to get
Yeah.
on a roller coaster. We don't choose the path of grief. And when you're in it, when you've been raised in so many ways to do things on your own, to be independent,
Right.
to handle things by yourself, and you get praise and recognition for being that strong, independent person, it can bring up feelings of guilt or inadequacy or failure if you need to reach out your hand to ask for and receive help. And so while I may do it quietly in the background, individually and in small groups, Cheryl does it
She's
with panache and exposure, being out there, being bigger than life. And I admire her for that ability. And I am more than delighted to be behind her saying, you go, because I love seeing that she can be out there reaching many, many more people. And it's an honor.
well. This
Thanks,
is
Mom.
this is just off the charts. This is, but it also talks about uh, how we as individuals, whether or not we're family members or friends, how we manage our days in and around grief. We all have to find that path, that that is comfortable for us. Because I kind of relate more to your style, Lauren, because I'm not, I'd like to be out there more, but, because my grief, I dealt with it more internally. And then, you found the path. And that's why I so admire what Cheryl's doing. I mean, she's taking her talents and skills and making a difference because she is turning pain into purpose, and she's taking Elliott's legacy and running with it. And I've through the photos I've seen and the visits we've had, I didn't know Elliott personally, but what you're doing is you're introducing him so vividly to others that are going to help them as they have their turn in caregiving or grief or whatever that role is, because the stark reality is we all end up having a role of somewhere down the road.
There
And I
was
think that's
a
why you're
moment
doing
in the
what you're doing.
hospital. Elliott had just come out of a coma, and the doctors came in and told him the leukemia was back in a way that they couldn't treat. They didn't expect, because he had been doing really well. He was in remission. And he looked at them and he said, "I beat this. It doesn't beat me." And the doctors came back in when I wasn't in the room, and they talked to him again. Someone from the hospital talked to him again because they wanted to make sure he wasn't just saying that because I was sitting there. And he said, "No, I beat this. It doesn't beat me. There's no alternative here. That's it. I beat this." And he was unwavering in that. And Elliott's army started while he was still alive. And I remember saying to a couple members of the hospital staff that there would be no coming back into his room with bad news. That this was his battlefield. And at 27 years old, we were just there it was his battle. He was going to fight it. And if the battle ended in any way, shape, or form, it was going to be on his terms. And so I think that that's where his inspiration really, he just, we talk about it all the time. I mean, to be at the top of your game like that, and to be so inspirational, and to be getting poked and prodded and having your diaper changed, as an adult, and to still be able to maintain that level of just strength and sheer willpower and determination. I think it's why his story is so special. And Elliott was a quiet kid. I think Elliott also did things a little bit more like my mom. Yeah. I have a very big mouth, and I am not afraid to use it. And for me, I realized, when I went to take care of my brother for a while in North Carolina while he was being treated at Duke University, and I was his voice. I was his voice on the days that he wasn't feeling up to it. I was his voice on the days that he couldn't think to ask questions. I was his voice on the days that he didn't like the way he was being treated by a particular member of his staff, and making sure they didn't come back to that room. Nope, I can do that. I could do that. And I realized, well, I was always kind of Elliott's mouthpiece growing up. He didn't start talking till he was almost 3, and probably because I would talk for him. But it was, there's so many people out there that don't know how to find their voice, or aren't comfortable using it, or are so in the depths of their treatment or their diagnosis or their caregiving, or they're watching from the sidelines, someone else go through it, and not knowing what to say or do. And it's okay. It's okay to be in your pain quietly. It's okay to handle things quietly. And it's okay to find a big personality like mine that's going to scream from the rooftops for what you need. And it's okay, as my mom said, to ask for help. And there's organizations like the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society that are doing it. They're doing it day in and day out, and not with the recognition certainly that they deserve. Especially, there's so many organizations out there, and with LLS, 81% of what they, the fundraising goes directly to the mission. They don't have these big overhead costs or giant salaries. I'll leave out the name of a particular organization I think we all know does at this point, and yet they're still doing blood drives everywhere. But these are people that as an organization where if there's someone who can't get to the hospital themselves, they get them rides. They're doing clinical trials. They're helping people in real time And it's something actually that my mom and I got the honor to go to, was the Little Heroes Prom in New Jersey, which is kids at all different stages, either in treatment or in remission, on all different stages of this blood cancer journey. They send glam squads and superheroes, and they get to not be patients for a night. They get to just be kids, and it was such a
Yeah.
special experience. And I looked at my mom and I said, we will never have had enough time with Elliott. It will never be fair that he's gone. I was like, but we got 27 years. We
Oh,
got to
right.
see him graduate and go to prom and join the military. And there's families that we were so touched by and so moved by, who there's grandfathers that don't know if they're going to outlive their grandchildren. There's parents that don't know what milestones they're going to see. And for this magical night, these families just got to be families. These kids just got to be kids. And when you watch little kids and you see what they're going through, and just their resilience and their buoyancy, it doesn't stop them from smiling or tearing up a dance floor. It doesn't stop them from practicing their little hearts out so that they can walk the red carpet instead of being in a wheelchair. And it's just so inspirational to see what kids bring to the table. And I think we need more of that. And as a little kid, I was definitely dancing on dance floors and shouting from rooftops. And I'm glad I can still do it now. And I'm here to do it for whoever needs me to do it for them, or to hold the hand of whoever wants me to do it with them, because I miss my brother, and that's my way of connecting to him and keeping him with me. Joy could go a long way. And while he was in the coma, I created a group where I just asked
Mhm.
people to post joy, share joy. There was so much darkness in the world at that point, and certainly so much fear in our own family. We had already lost my dad. We didn't know what was happening with my brother. Um, and it blew up, and it started as just a couple people. There's a few hundred in it now. It's not, certainly didn't go viral, but through this, it was also how I would share updates with Elliott. And I said, Elliott's army really formed after he told the doctors, I beat this, it doesn't beat me. And that's where so he was alive still when that started, and it became Elliott's army of
Mhm.
hope, Elliott's army of positivity, Elliott's army of inspiration. And this idea of a little bit of joy can go a long way started to inspire other people. And I had the thought that everyone knows someone, and it started because Hackensack Hospital, and particularly Kim Mason, was just so amazing with helping us and taking things that Elliott liked, for example, the Giants and the Rangers. And she had some connection through the hospital to get him some signed memorabilia. And it sort of dawned on me that everyone knows someone, and in a world of
Mhm.
events and in a world of just people, and me being a people person, I wasn't afraid to ask who people knew, because first of all, he's
Right.
27 years old. He served our country for 4 years. And here he was fighting the literal battle of a lifetime. How does it inspire you? And the videos just started pouring in because everyone was in lockdown. So, I mean, I remember just like I said, not being afraid to ask. So one of my best friends was in a mahjong ring with Rachel Dratch, and she sent a video. And Rachel Dratch, being friends with Tina Fey, she sent a video. And Kim Mason, who's our angel at the hospital that I just can't say enough good things about, her husband had been in an improv
Sends a
group
video.
with someone who was on The Good Place, and he reached out. And so the whole cast of The Good Place started sending videos. And then it just spiraled into everyone that knew someone told the story. And I remember Will Ferrell being my holy grail. And when I got a video from Will Ferrell, I couldn't even wait till it was strung along into a cohesive video that we now have. But it was just every day being able to share these people who were so inspired by his story and grateful for his fight and his service. And I mean, there was people that we didn't even personally ask, but when they heard about it, they started sending videos. Ed Helms wrote a song. So it's amazing what some feel good things can do. A little bit of joy does go a long way. And, and laughter is the best medicine. And
A little bit of joy goes a long way. It's being able to step into your comfort zone and talk about these things. Yeah, the laughter is the best medicine.
And Victor Borge also said, not only is laughter the best medicine, but it's the shortest distance between people. And in the midst of grief, we still need to find ways to have joy, to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments, and being able to connect to those moments, even if you're going to feel guilty after because you think you're in some way saying I'm not missing my loved one. No, life happens as Cheryl pointed out, it comes in waves, and there are those calm, beautiful rolling waves, and then there are those smashing waves.
Right.
And it's knowing that all the feelings are real, they're allowed, but they don't define us overall.
In The Office all the time, and the cast of The Office got involved in this video too, but that's really what kickstarted it. Was he wanted to laugh.
Yes.
He wanted to zone out and just laugh, and so he was watching silly, funny shows that let him kind of check out of the scariness of the world around him, or the fight that he had to have, and he could just sit back and laugh. And I think that that's so important, because when we stop laughing, we stop living, and that doesn't mean that every day has to be on a scale of 1 to 10, you're just belly laughs the whole way. But, for me, I miss my brother, and I'm not forgetting about my dad. I miss him too. But it's a different connection. I took a class in college where the professor said, your siblings are the longest relationship you'll ever have in your life. And that stuck with me. And clearly for me, unfortunately, my living relationship with Elliott won't be, but my connection to him still can be. And for me, this has been how I stay connected and how he stays present, because I can miss him. I missed him when he was in Kuwait. I miss his voice. I miss his laugh. I miss the arms that could hug me for sure, but he's still here in so many ways. And that connection is invaluable, because it means I get to feel him every day, just in a different way. Well, but for us, the Elliott's Army team is based in New Jersey, and we will be continuing to fundraise. There's a link that we can share where you can read more about my story and Elliott's story and what we've been doing. And whether it's $10 or $10,000, like I said, every dollar counts. It all goes to a great cause. With LLS, 81% goes back to the mission, which is just so honorable. And as I mentioned, they're helping people in real time. This isn't just about drugs and clinical trials. It's so much more than that. It's patient support and advocacy. It's getting people to and from the hospital. It's getting them connected to resources they weren't previously aware of. We were in a position where, because of the Elliott's history with the military and the fact that he was active duty, we didn't have to worry about the medical bills. We were able to just be present and be with him and focus on him and that love and that time. And unfortunately, for so many people,
so important.
The medical bills are such a reality. And LLS does so much to take that burden off of these families so that they can just be families, so that these kids can be kids and these parents can be parents without the dauntingness of, will your house still be there next week if they go through one more treatment? And I think it's so important that we support causes like this, because you don't always know what to say or what to do. There's not always a right thing to say, but there's always a right thing to do. And I think supporting a cause like this and supporting an organization like this and supporting families like this is just so meaningful. I got the opportunity to speak to a father whose son has been going through leukemia treatments, and he was just so grateful because he understood that without people like me, like my mom, Chris, like you, that give us a platform to talk to the world, and people that get involved and do something, they don't know where they'd be, and they don't know if their son would still be here because of how much help they've gotten from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And so I just think people need to know that all these little things add up. You don't have to be the one with the loudest voice or the biggest platform or the biggest practice. You know, you can be the person that has $10 to give and you give it. You can be the person that has 1,000 to give and you give it. And you can be everything in between because you're giving, you're doing something. And if we all do something together, if we all fight together, that's where we get to change our vision of the future. And one day, hopefully, my goal is that I can help another family have a happier ending to their story.
Exactly.
And I think if more and more people just get involved, and let's hope for happier endings, maybe one day we see a world without cancer at all. But right now we can start with one family. We can start with one little kid. We can start with one loved one. We can start with $1. It all makes a difference.
All makes a difference. And we'll have all the links to the videos, the Heroes Prom video, the Hi Elliott video, and the link where you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society with the Elliott's Army campaign. But Cheryl, I have one final real important question to ask.
Okay.
I want you to, you got to think really hard about this, okay?
I do.
You know anybody,
You're actually talking to two of them.
Do you know anybody that has jumped out of an airplane?
When Elliott first got to his Air Force base, his permanent duty station, one of the things he did was jump out of an airplane. And the look on his face, the smile that could light up a room, he said it was one of the best things, if not the best thing he had ever done. And so when Cheryl and I were talking about what to do in honor of his 30th birthday this year, in January, I said, well, I think we need to skydive. I think we need to do this to celebrate him. And Cheryl said, well, and this is something I usually put out an idea and Cheryl will create the event. And she goes, if you want to do it, Mom, it's on you. You put it together. And I did. And I found a place in Florida where we were in January, and we had 6 of us jump out of that plane in his honor to celebrate his 30th birthday. And it was an exhilarating, uplifting celebration.
That when I saw that, it just tickled my heart to see that what the two of you had done there to honor him. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do on his 40th birthday. So.
Oh, I mean, I'm in the 41st, so.
Cheryl doesn't need 10 years to plan. She might do it sooner.
We'll have something. So Cheryl, let all of our listeners and viewers know how they can be in touch with you, how they can be in touch.
Sure. So again, there's a link that we can share that'll take you directly to the Elliott's Army page, where again you can read more about Elliott's story, my story, why we're doing this, and make a fully tax-deductible donation of any amount. Nothing is too small, nothing is too big. We still have some time to fundraise, so we're going through June 14th. We'll be doing this. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 14th. The page will close. But until then, you can reach out through the Whole Care Network for our lovely host, Chris, and he can get you in touch with me. And you can make those donations. If you have questions, we can also offer resources from the LLS as well. More information there is offered on the page as well through that link.
And again, we'll have all the links in the show notes. And Lauren and Cheryl, you're turning pain into purpose. It is quite the honor to have both of you on today, and you certainly are a WCN influencer. I can't thank you enough for spending the time with me. And I feel like I know Elliott now even more. Thank you.
Thank you.